The Google Pixel 8a has just been released, and this is one of my favourite line of camera phones. It consistently performs fantastically, especially for its price when you consider this is a more budget smartphone. The Samsung Galaxy S24 Ultra, on the other hand, is of course one of the best of the best. This, in fact, is pretty much my favourite smartphone camera out and available right now, and I thought it would make an interesting comparison to take almost like the best of the best when it comes to Android phones, and then a more budget option to see just what you actually get when you are spending almost $1,000 extra.
Okay, so these are the front-facing cameras on both phones. They are both recording in 4K, 30 frames a second right now.
And already off the bat, I can kind of see differences in the lighting and the colors on between both of these phones. What's interesting right now is that the whites are being handled very differently. Like the Pixel is much
warmer than the Samsung. Samsung, I would say, is probably kind of truer to life right now. I'll be switching between the
audio sources between the two phones. Hopefully it's kind of, there's a lack enough or
enough of a lack of wind that is usable. But I'm going to kind of go ahead into this little section here. Right off the bat, there is somewhere I can go where it's a little bit more low light, as you can see right here.
And right off the bat, you can just immediately see the significant difference here between the Samsung and the Pixel 8a. The Samsung looks significantly better in a lower light environment.
You can kind of see the biggest differences right now are the skin tones. Like the Google Pixel 8a is really brightening up the skin tones, whereas the Samsung, it might not actually look as pleasing, but it is significantly more accurate to real life.
This front-facing camera comparison is very interesting because for the most part, you're actually seeing a lot of the kind of nuances that these camera manufacturers are wanting in their smartphone images. So for the most part, you actually see the Samsung footage be really accurate, really true to life. There's almost no kind of processing going on my skin, that type of thing. I'm not being relit or changed or anything like that. Whereas on the Pixel 8a, don't get me wrong, it is a pleasing image and it does look really good, but the skin is significantly smoothed. I'm a little bit brighter as well, so Google's doing a ton of software things to basically kind of like work out where I am, boost the lighting just a little bit. It's not my favorite thing because I prefer an image that is just a little bit more true to life. I think I would have to give this one to the Samsung. There are of course some significant differences between these two phones, and most notably it's the additional lenses that you have access to on the Galaxy S24 Ultra.
So talking about those zooms, it's pretty bright out here at the moment, but I'm going to do my best to expose the screens in the right way. But you can clearly see on here that we have these zooms at the bottom of the screen on both devices here. The 0.5x, the 1x, the 2x on the Pixel 8a, and then of course all of the zooms on the Samsung Galaxy S24 Ultra. So we can go from that 0.6 through to a 1, a 3x zoom, a 5x zoom, a 10x zoom, all the way to an 100 times zoom. But then on the Pixel 8a, it really is a case of just 1x and 2x.
Let's get cracking. Let's start with the main 1x lens.
So we'll start off talking about some video, then we will move on to photos. But the first test I wanted to do was kind of bright sunlight, and the sun was almost like directly in the cameras here. And this has really surprised me because I think the Samsung Galaxy S24 Ultra is actually a clear outstanding winner here. Don't get me wrong, video on the Pixel devices has never been its like absolute strong point. I think it takes fantastic stills and video's got a lot better on the Samsung devices, but the Pixel image here is kind of a little bit hazy, even though it's in 4K, 30 frames a second, exactly like the Samsung, so it's exactly the same settings here, but clearly the image is not as crisp. If anything, I think the Samsung is a little bit over crisp, to be honest. Here's probably a better example for the Pixel. I think this is certainly a lot closer. I've muted myself talking here because there was just too much wind, unfortunately, but the kind of picture is a decent illustration at least. I do think the Pixel always wants to kind of balance the exposure just a bit more. It kind of wants darker things brighter and brighter things darker, which I think you can see from the image here. But this certainly is closer when we're talking about the main rear-facing camera. All right, so now looking at some stills, and overwhelmingly, I think, to be honest, this is the Pixel A's strong point. I think it punches way above its weight when it comes to the main rear-facing camera for stills. I don't really think you can actually pick apart either of these. If anything, I actually think I prefer the Pixel A images generally over the S24 S24 Ultra images. I think the colors tend to be just a little bit more natural. I don't think you're going to be disappointed at all when it comes to either of these cameras in the main rear-facing lens.
So of course I had to throw in the occasional 8K comparison here because I think I kind of just want to reiterate, and obviously bear in mind that any 8K you're seeing inside this video is downsampled to a 4K image because this video is mastered in 4K. But I think far and away, 8K is just not very useful when it comes to smartphone videography, in my personal experience. I barely would use 8K in like any application in my life, to be honest, apart from when you're working with 360 footage, which I actually mentioned in my last video. Unless you dramatically want to reframe your image, in which case, sure, shooting in 8K will give you a bit more resolution to be able to do that, but for the most part, this just isn't a feature and functionality that I am particularly interested, and I think that's actually backed up by the images that you've seen in this video. I think the 8K just kind of looks pretty similar to the 4K. So I think overall, to be honest, the performance is fantastic across this main lens on both of these devices. You of course have a difference in kind of overall resolution, allowing, for instance, the Galaxy S24 Ultra to capture 8K video, whereas you capture 4K on the 8A. And now let's talk about the ultra-wide.
Again, same thing, we're going to kick off with some ultra-wide video. So this is the Pixel 8A that you're looking at right now. And what's interesting is that I think this picture actually looks better than the main rear-facing camera in this particular situation. Like I said, the sunlight was super bright. The only thing I can really think of is that there was almost like maybe a slight glare in that main rear-facing camera on the 8A before, because this looks a little bit cleaner overall, and I think it's closer to the S24 Ultra. I do think the light temperature is slightly different. You're seeing a difference in, like the Pixel is a bit warmer than the Samsung, which is its kind of natural tendency. Let's have a look at some photos here. There aren't that many differences, to be honest, between these two lenses. I think the Pixel, again, performs very, very well. There definitely seems to be a tendency for that the Pixel wants brighter images in their scenes, and again, that evenness of exposure that we've already talked about. But again, for the most part, this is all coming down to preference at this point. Hopefully this is illustrating that if you are caring about these lenses specifically, you could go far wrong with the Pixel 8a considering its price.
One of the overwhelming differences between these two devices, and of course this is probably the fact that we are comparing a Pixel device to a Samsung device, and these two manufacturers drastically handle their camera software very differently, but it is just kind of like overall temperature and white balance. There is just continually very, very different colors coming out of these devices, and I think this is going to come back to actually what you think is a more pleasing image. What kind of style of image do you actually like? Samsung, I would say, is probably a bit more accurate, whereas the Google Pixel 8a sometimes just kind of like will make sunsets very purple or very, very warm, whereas the Samsung tends to be cooler, but I do think they end up being in a slightly more accurate image, whereas the Google Pixel is overwhelmingly very pleasing. If you enjoy shooting macro photography, this is an important distinction. The Google Pixel 8a does not have any access to a macro camera. For me, that's not a massive deal because for the most part, I actually don't shoot macro shots very often at all, but the Samsung Galaxy S24 Ultra does shoot macro. Just like the more expensive phones in the Pixel lineup, they have reserved that for phones like the Google Pixel 8 Pro, and it's not available in the 8a. And of course, we have to talk about portrait mode.
We'll do this one as a blind test again, so I'm going to show you a couple of cameras, camera A and then camera B. So there's only two portrait examples here, but it's hopefully enough of an illustrative example. Here, as side by side, you've got camera A on the left and camera B on the right. I actually use portrait mode a lot for objects, so I also wanted to test that, of course, as well. So it'd be interesting to get an idea of whether or not you think A or B is better right now, but the reveal is that camera A is the Google Pixel 8a, and then camera B is the S24 Ultra. Both of these phones actually really impressed me with the cutouts. I think they've done fantastically. The S24 Ultra is pretty much the best cutout device I've ever used. Portrait mode is fantastic on this camera, but you can see that clearly the biggest difference is almost like the exposure level and also the vibrancy. The Samsung is significantly more vibrant. The Pixel looks actually, I would say, truer to life in this example, but this is going to come down to preference. For the object, I've actually zoomed to 130% on both of these photos to kind of give it almost like a slightly full screen look, but I think I would suggest that this image is a bit better on the Samsung. I think the cutout is good on both devices. Again, they've done a really good job kind of picking up what's camera and what should be in focus and what's what's not. The Samsung is significantly more blurry, but you can adjust the f-stop really just as a setting for both devices. I guess the only real imperfection is within the camera strap here on the Samsung, it was kind of struggled to pick up that was also background, and that's left that unblurry.
What's very interesting about when I test a Google Pixel device is that every Pixel is almost the same, or has been for a few years now. They really want all of the data inside your frame to be exposed in the image. So what I mean by that is they really don't like crunching the blacks down to what they actually might look like in real life. Let's take this image here as an example. So here is the Samsung Galaxy S24 Ultra shot. You can see the exposure is mainly set on the outside of the window, and you pretty much lost a lot of the available data in the surrounding area of the window. If we now look at the Google Pixel 8a photo, you can just see what I'm talking about here. So you see that the Google Pixel wants to allow almost like everything in the frame to have a certain level of exposure. And this is going to be a preference thing, but for the most part, I actually enjoy taking photos that are a little bit more true to life. This continually has been a complaint of mine with the Pixel line. You of course do have a shadow controller, so you can adjust it each and every time if you did want, but for the most part I want a camera, especially on a smartphone, that is just able to snap nice and quickly. And for my preference, the Samsung is significantly better when it comes to actually exposing a scene in the correct way. So having compared these cameras in a multitude of situations now, I'm sadly obviously not going to be able to give you an answer of like, I think this phone is better and this phone is better, because the price is a really important context here. Of course, it's very, very hard to beat the Samsung Galaxy S24 Ultra. It of course has a far more capable camera system, mainly because of the additional lenses that are available. However, if you are only really caring about an ultra-wide lens and a main rear-facing lens, you could do significantly worse than going for the Pixel 8a. It is a fantastic camera system. They perform fantastically well every single year for their weight and price. If you think you're going to be shooting photos and videos and mainly sticking to that 1x lens or ultra-wide lens, hopefully this has given you an idea about whether you want to spend the money on a more expensive camera phone, or you're going to be happy going for something like the Pixel 8a. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and you can check out another one of my videos right here.